Welcome to Quality Time with MoreSteam. I am your host, Dan Swartout. I'm thrilled to have Brent Godwin with us today. Brent is a continuous improvement regional manager at the Lubrizol Corporation, and he recently took the plunge and attended MoreSteam's Best Practices for Operational Excellence Conference for the very first time. After 23 years of this conference bringing together leaders in the field of operational excellence, Brent finally made the trip to Central Ohio in August. On today's episode, Brent is sharing his perspective on what he discovered, the connections he made, and the insights he's taking back to his team. Also, as an added bonus, MoreSteam's Vice President of Marketing, Lindsay Van Dyne, returns to the show for the first time in over a year. Brent, Lindsay, and you. What an episode. I'm so glad you're joining us. And now, our conversation with Brent Godwin. Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by Brent Godwin from the Lubrizol Corporation, and we are also lucky enough to be joined once again by Lindsay Van Dyne, the Vice President of Marketing here at MoreSteam. We're all going to talk about the recent MoreSteam Best Practices for Operational Excellence Conference, which Lindsay put together, which Brent attended. We're going to get Brent's perspective as a first-time attendee of the conference. Brent, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Good to be here.
And Lindsay, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here again, Dan.
It's been just about a year since you joined us, Lindsay, and it is exciting to have you back. It is exciting to have Brent here. Brent, would you give us a little bit of kind of your background that got you into the area of continuous improvement and operational excellence?
Yeah, so my name is Brent Godwin. Work for, as Daniel mentioned, the Lubrizol Corporation. Just to give you a little background on the company, we are a specialty chemical company, been around nearly 100 years, mainly engine oil additives, but we do other things as well. So the company's been around for a while. I've been with the company actually 18 years, mostly manufacturing, a few different sites. Had a lot of exposure to lean tools and thinking several years ago. More recently, our company has started taking on Lean Six Sigma initiatives. So we partnered with MoreSteam a little over a year ago to begin putting together our Greenbelt program. They invited me to this conference, thought it was a really good opportunity to see how other companies have developed programs like I'm trying to develop here at Lubrizol. So it was very beneficial for me. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little more as we move through this.
Absolutely, we will. And Lindsay, you've been the driving force behind the Best Practices for Operational Excellence Conference for quite some time. Why don't you give us an overview of what the conference is all about?
I was tasked with organizing it with several other members of the MoreSteam team, but I think the driving force of this conversation...
Lindsay, I love that. Look at what a leader, already saying, nah, it wasn't me. It was a team effort. I like that.
It was a team effort. And also, MoreSteam, okay, I don't think we've talked about MoreSteam's mission on this podcast before, but the mission of MoreSteam is pretty simple: to help people make important things work better. And as part of that, Bill thought of this conference years and years ago. This was our 23rd year doing this conference. And the point of the conference is to facilitate sharing of best practices for operational excellence. So getting leaders together who are trying to make important things work better, to talk to each other about what's working, and sometimes more importantly, what's not working.
Thank you so much for that, Lindsay. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to have you on the show, Brent. We've been doing this conference now. This was the 23rd year of the conference, your first year attending. So we wanted to really get the perspectives and understanding of somebody who is an expert in this field, but is attending our conference for the very first time. So Brent, you already talked a little bit about why you decided to attend in 2025. How did your expectations of the conference compare to your actual experience at the conference?
I'll start it by saying Lindsay and her group, her team, did an excellent job. 2 days packed full of information and presentations and just all the things that go with it. I've been to several conferences over the years. This one was very well put together, very organized, and Lindsay was very helpful for me when I had to step out and I had to take a meeting that I just couldn't not take. And she made sure I found where to go, and have the meeting and all that. So thanks for that. Coming into it, I wasn't sure what to expect. I mean, I saw the agenda, so I understood there was going to be several presentations about Lean Six Sigma, and other things MoreSteam does. But once I got there, and once you get the feeling of just the crowd that's in there, I think there were just short of 200 people in this thing. A lot of MoreSteam folks, but a lot of other customers of MoreSteam with different experiences with, just exactly what I was needing. Lean Six Sigma, how have people implemented things? And as Lindsay just said, also sometimes what didn't work, right? It's really important. I networked quite a bit. So that's the big opportunity, right? Not only seeing the presentations, but also getting to know new people and new companies and making those contacts. But I'll have to say this, it exceeded my expectations for what I ended up getting out of it.
I think we should talk a little bit about the design of the conference because it's different than some of the other conferences that quality professionals might go to throughout the year. Can we get into that?
Of course we can.
Okay. I think part of the uniqueness of this conference is twofold. One, it's invite only. So we don't market it to get just anybody there. We specifically invite leaders who are running operational excellence initiatives, running process improvement initiatives in their organizations, who are developing problem-solving capability within their organizations. We want to make sure that those leaders are in the room so that the discussion and the networking is around what we intend is best practices, what works to make people solve problems close to where the work is done. So that's one difference, is that it's invite only. The second difference in the design of this conference, everybody stays together for nearly the whole conference. So many other conferences, you'll have lots of tracks and you can choose which presentation you want to go to, and you kind of flow around through different rooms and exhibit halls. This one's different in that it's an intimate setting where everybody is in the same room and even positioned in a way that they can see each other, so that there's a lot of discussion during presentations and, of course, after during the Q&A.
Thank you, Lindsay. And that leads right into my next question for Brent. One unique aspect of the BP for OpEx conference is bringing together leaders from healthcare, retail, manufacturing, energy, and more. What surprised you most about the common challenges or solutions you heard across all those different industries?
Well, I'll say this, it just reinforced that problem solving and a methodology like Lean Six Sigma is universal, right? I've seen it within my own company. When we started Lean Six Sigma and our Greenbelt training, we are on our fourth training group now, MoreSteam. I came into it thinking, okay, it's mostly going to be for manufacturing. That's my background. That's kind of what we brought it in for. But we've already branched out into supply chain. We've already seen examples, not with us yet, but where it applies to human resources processing. Anywhere you have a process, this applies. So whether it's medical, or whether it's insurance, whatever it is, it applies to everyone. So it did just reinforce what I already had a pretty good idea of, that this works wherever you need it to work.
Lindsay, you've been with MoreSteam now for quite a while. When did you really notice that all of these tools were being picked up by so many different industries? Because again, like Brent said, you think initially manufacturing, but as it continues to move out into other sectors, when did you really see it growing into those other sectors?
Dan, I'd say MoreSteam was already working with a lot of organizations across several industries when I joined 12 years ago. So we had in the room at BP for OpEx then a lot of industries represented. The one I've seen that grow the most in my time at MoreSteam is probably IT, technology. Okay. Somewhere 5 or 6 years after I joined, Tom Pater, who was recently a guest on the podcast, and Mike Orzin, they wrote a book called The Lean IT Field Guide, and then collaborated with us during that time frame to put together a course to talk about lean principles in the IT space. And after that, we started to see a little bit more engagement on the technology side with Lean Six Sigma principles, and how it kind of works complementary alongside Agile and some of the other practices that technology teams typically have. So does that answer your question?
It most certainly does, because I'm curious about that. And one of the things I've seen so much recently is really a broader adoption of these principles in healthcare, which we've also covered on the show. Brent, of all the presentations you saw at the conference, which presentation left the biggest impression on you and what made it memorable?
So 2 companies, that was Constellation and Medtronic, I think, were the 2.
Mm-hmm.
They've had Lean Six Sigma running in their companies for several years, so they're much more mature than my process. And coming into this, I'd always thought of either green belt, black belt projects as, okay, one person takes it and it takes a long time. That is the perception anyway that I've always had. Both of these companies had the same struggle that I'm having with, hey, these are going to take so long. It takes a long time to get to see the value from them. They found ways to make them go faster. In Medtronic's case, they utilized really a rapid improvement event thought process behind it, where they would take a 1 week concentrated effort, maybe every 2 or 3 weeks, or maybe every month, to really shorten the time that it took to effectively execute a project such as that. And which it really fits with the company where we are now. We've been doing lean for a long time. Rapid improvement events, it's not foreign to us. We actually like it because we like those quick wins, and concentrated effort. So to execute those that way was really that aha moment for me. Is like, there is more than one way to do this. Just hadn't really thought of it until I saw that. It's a huge benefit for me. And I've already kind of socialized that with a couple of our training cohorts. I don't think anybody has implemented it just yet, but it's certainly another way to execute.
Brent, when Ryan got up there from Medtronic and said, "Why do our Greenbelt projects take months and months to get done?" And then he said, "Because we let it."
Yep.
And you just felt the air suck out of the room. Like, yeah,
exactly
it's
right.
because we let it. I don't think I'll ever forget that moment.
And even showed the stats where they didn't quite cut down the times by 50%, but it was, I think it was for Greenbelt projects from 9 months to like 5, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere there. And it was like, wow.
Even more dramatic than that, if I remember.
Maybe. But still, it was enough to say, yeah, I need to check that out. So something to consider.
That was a really impactful moment, like you said, from Ryan. And I'll tell you, one of the presenters from Constellation was Meredith Brody, who has been a guest on the show. So if you'd like to listen and hear more about Meredith Brody and the efforts they've made at Constellation to implement a yellow belt program, go back and listen to one of our previous episodes, the one with Meredith Brody. I'll put that in the show notes. Brent, you mentioned a little bit earlier about networking opportunities. And
Yes.
MoreSteam really emphasizes that BP for OpEx is about building meaningful connections in the operational excellence community. How successful were you in making new professional connections? And did any of those connections surprise you at all?
I don't know about surprise me, but I will say this, that again, I'll plug Lindsay and her group, or it could be just, this was MoreSteam's way of doing it. There were some built-in networking opportunities early on. So it made people mix and match and talk to different people and ask questions and do things like that. So that was helpful to gain a few, business cards, if you will, for other people to talk to. But also one of the presentations, it was actually a staged interview with one of the MoreSteam employees, Gabe Turk and Kim Sabelli.
Kim Scabelli, yeah.
Yeah, with ABS Bio. So as he was interviewing her, and it was more, they talked some about Lean Six Sigma, but it was a lot about just managing and how you build culture. Because honestly, to have a successful problem solving organization, the culture has to be right. It has to be open for it. She talked a lot about, you have to be willing to try. And I can be the personal advocate for that, because we did it years ago here with Lubrizol. And we had to be willing to let frontline operators particularly try things. And, as long as it wasn't going to cause a health, safety, environmental issue, let them try. We always say this, you either it's successful and you win, or it's not successful and you learn what didn't work. Hey, what's next? Kind of thing. And she talked about that in her interview. And when it was over, I didn't get a chance to catch up with her that day, but I sent her an email. She replied, and now we have monthly calls where we just talk about anything, that is on our minds with either problem solving, Lean Six Sigma, lean management, all those things. But she's been a really good resource for me. And again, a connection made during the conference.
That is really neat and exactly what we were hoping for in getting that group in the room together.
And I'll tell you, Brent, you just did it again, because Kim Scavelli is going to be a guest on an upcoming episode of the show. So again, you've told our listeners to go back into the past and find something, and to look forward to something in the future. You couldn't have done this better if I had given you a script, Brent. Fantastic.
Nice.
Kim is great. Kim is great. So I'm so glad you made that connection.
Oh, and hey, one more, and this might not be the right place for it, but you can plug this in here before I forget it. So my company, the Lubrizol Corporation, is owned by Berkshire Hathaway.
Uh-huh.
One of the presenters there, Hebe Alexander, works for McLean, which is a sister company of ours with Berkshire. And she and I had connected just prior to the conference, like a month. But anyway, I got to see her present. She was presenting on what I would do different, what if I were implementing today, kind of thing. And that was a really good presentation for folks like me, new to how do you implement a program methodology like this in a bigger company. And yeah, she and I also have monthly cadence calls, basically, to talk about, hey, what are we working on?
I'm glad you picked up on the design of the networking in the beginning to get everybody loose, because I've been organizing this conference for the last 4 years. And I noticed people wouldn't get loose until the reception on the first night when we had a good icebreaker. Really? So I thought, what if we take that icebreaker or that activity, get people moving at the very beginning? And even though it was a little chaotic, it was like organized chaos, and it got people laughing and talking to each other. So I'm really glad that you picked up on that and that made a difference for your networking personally. I hope it did for others as well. And then on the programming side, part of the design of the programming is finding leaders who are at different stages of their program maturity. So people who have just launched a Lean Six Sigma program in the last few years and can talk about what went well and what didn't. Those who are mid-journey, who are dealing with all kinds of middle-of-the-road problems, leadership buy-in, getting projects across the goal line, what have you. And then those who have had long-standing programs who are trying to reinvigorate them because they're stagnant, and what does it look like to move on to the next thing. So I hope you saw that in the programming, that we had each of those levels of program maturity represented, as well as the variety across industry.
Yeah. No, I will say this, going back to the icebreaker on the front end. So you may not can tell it, but I am a lifelong introvert. And so, yeah, just, I will sit there in my little seat and stare ahead the whole time and not interact a whole lot unless I have to. So it does help to loosen things up, to get people to move around a little bit and talk.
I don't know, Dan, if we have any of the movie titles that people picked. So that icebreaker activity, we should talk about what it was. So the activity was to write down a movie title that describes your journey or your likeness to continuous improvement. The example given by Peg when we went to do this activity was Groundhog Day, doing the same thing over and over again and just kind of stuck in that. And I don't know, Dan, if you remember any of the titles, but there were so many good movie titles. It was a riot.
Yeah.
What was yours?
I don't remember what I wrote down now.
I remember what mine was, and I knew it wouldn't win. It wouldn't win because it wasn't very creative. It was back to school, because I'm still learning about all this stuff. I knew it wouldn't win. It was just too, it wasn't creative enough.
Somebody, I think, even had Back to the Future, right?
I think somebody did have Back to the Future. And there were some really, really funny ones. I saw this on social media. If Back to the Future came out today, Marty McFly wouldn't be going back to 1955. He'd be going back to 1995. When I was in college. I need a moment to think about that. It seems like a good time for this short break. MoreSteam's enterprise process improvement platform includes the tools, training, and software you need to transform your organization into a problem-solving powerhouse. Join the ranks of Fortune 500 companies that trust MoreSteam for their enterprise process improvement. Visit moresteam.com to learn more. Also, I want to take just a moment to thank you for listening to Quality Time with MoreSteam. You can email the show at qualitytime@moresteam.com. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast service. And now back to my conversation with Brent Godwin and Lindsay Van Dyne. Brent, if you had to pick one key insight or strategy from the entire conference that you're most excited to implement, what would it be and why?
Back to what I had mentioned, or with the whole, you don't have to always think of a green belt, black belt project as taking forever, right? So we saw examples in there where companies found ways to shorten that considerably. So you're getting that value quicker, right? That was the biggest one for me from those companies that have already done it and they've made it work or determined how to make it work, in groups and concentrated efforts that can shorten that time.
Excellent. And for continuous improvement leaders who might be considering attending next year's BP for OpEx conference for the first time, what would you tell them about the experience? What should they expect? And how should they prepare to get the most value? Since you're a veteran now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, come into it with the knowledge of your current program, the questions you have, it was, how do you determine who the candidates are that you pull in? How do you pull them in? How do you determine what projects they take on? They'll address throughout the week or ask those questions during the networking piece of it. So yeah, be prepared for those type of questions and be with business cards with you because you're going to meet a lot of people. And even the last day, and I was only able to stay the 2 days, I was still bumping into people that I hadn't even seen yet. There were so many there. It's like, wow, this is such a big group of people. It was awesome. But just be ready to ask questions and have an open mind to see what other folks are doing and how they're making it work.
One of the things I was really impressed with was the question and answers that happened during the presentations and how willing everyone was to share with each other. And there truly was that sense of community. Like, we're all in this together. We're all helping each other out. Our problems might not be in the same industry or sector, but they're kind of universal. So how can we get through this together? I really appreciated that about the conference.
Yeah.
Brent, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much. Anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to mention about the conference or about Tennessee volunteer football? I tend to work a little football into a lot of episodes, and it's just the start of the season.
Well, I can say go Vols now because we are 2-0.
Oh, there you go.
September the 8th. So we'll see how that goes. We play Georgia this weekend. So, all the things I had on my list to make sure that I touched on, I got all of them.
Thank you so much, Brent. Lindsay, anything you'd like to add since you bristled earlier when I said driving force, you were tasked with assembling a team to put this conference together. Anything you would like to add that I have not touched on yet?
Yeah, we didn't talk about the conference being at Wendy's global headquarters in Dublin, Ohio, but the Wendy's team was wonderful to work with. So I partnered with Stephanie Chen, who's the director of continuous improvement over there, and her team were marvelous to work with. The staff at Wendy's was so helpful setting up the event. Their facilities are gorgeous. So it was really great to work with them, and they're committed to operational excellence. Just fantastic to partner with them. We'll be somewhere else next year. I am sad about that, but had a great time with Wendy's this year.
Yeah, that was a beautiful facility, and it was very well done. And Stephanie, I did get the chance to talk to her some. She had offered up during the conference for anyone that wanted to join her every other month call with other operational excellence leaders throughout the world, really.
Yeah.
And I've been on one of those calls already. So that one's also pretty enlightening.
I'm glad you plugged that because I know that's close to her heart, and she's about getting the community together to learn from each other too. So I'm really glad you plugged that.
Yep.
And Stephanie was the facilitator of a fantastic roundtable discussion at the conference. Great conversation.
Yes, I would definitely do roundtable discussions again. Stephanie thought through some different topics. So we did 3 different sections of topics, and then she had thought starter questions for each section. And as I walked around the room, people were really engaged. There was a lot of learnings from those roundtable discussions. I think it gave more people a chance to voice their thoughts and get involved in a way that the presentations on stage maybe couldn't facilitate. So yeah, kudos to Stephanie for a job well done facilitating those roundtable discussions.
Yes, absolutely.
That was fantastic. This has been fantastic. I remember too, during the conference, I got to share that I, back in 1993, was at Wendy's corporate headquarters and got paid to sample 2 different turkey sandwiches they were testing at the time. And that was, it brought back a lot of good memories.
Good. I'm glad.
Brent, thank you so much for joining us here today. This has been outstanding. Loved meeting you at the conference. Really enjoyed getting the chance to talk with you today about the conference. And I'm so glad you had some positive takeaways, and especially that you've been able to make those connections, because that's really the culture that MoreSteam is looking to build through this conference, the community of leaders, bring them together so that we can all work together to solve problems for the whole wide world.
The whole wide world.
Yep.
The whole wide world.
Well,
it's a
I'll say
lofty goal.
this, for both of you and to Peg and anybody else at MoreSteam, thanks for the invite to the conference, but also thank you for inviting me to be on this podcast.
Thank you, Brent.
You're very welcome.
And we will see you next time on Quality Time with MoreSteam.